Yo, what's up? What's up? This is your man Fetch the Great checking in once again. Let's get straight to it. Late night edition. I got time tonight, and something came across my timeline a little earlier that I just had to touch on. Um, let's get back to this hammerhead shark looking asshole that goes by the name of Halle Bailey. Um, if you're familiar with her, well, if you're familiar with her, you don't need me to explain. But if you're not familiar with Halle Bailey, she was the girl that played the Little Mermaid, the black version, the black version of Little Mermaid, the one that came out last year, I believe. She also used to be in a group with her sister Chloe Bailey. They used to have a little singing group together. But most notably, nowadays, the only thing that you really hear about Halle Bailey is in regards to this tumultuous, extremely contentious situation that she has with her baby daddy, who is a guy by the name of DDG. Now, DDG, to my knowledge, is a streamer, and that's really all I know about him. You know, I'm not a fan or anything of that nature, but a spade is a spade. You know, I call it how I see it, and every time I've seen anything pertaining to their situation, their parenting situation, it seems like she is continuing to be in a position of pretty much having all the cards in her favor, which is no surprise, right? That's just how it is normally in this country. The woman generally always has all the cards, all the advantage, all the leverage, and the man just has to kind of fall in line and get whatever he can when it comes to simply trying to see his own child. And what I've come to find out, much like many men in this entire nation, is that DDG finds himself in that exact same situation. Because when I was looking at my timeline earlier today, I happened to see this, guys. Look at that. Read that and tell me if that doesn't make your blood boil as much as it makes mine boil. Halle Bailey reportedly requested DDG only get 6 hours of supervised visits per week. That amounts to about 13 days per year. 13 days per year. Now, what woman would want to keep a man away from his child? A bitter, vindictive bitch. That's who. This hammerhead, shark-looking asshole is trying to keep this man from his own son. Now, here's the kicker. Anything that you've seen previously, prior to them having this breakup and then having all of this bad blood between them, everything that you saw up to that point was her just completely gushing over this dude, saying how great of a dad he is. Oh, he's so attentive. He's doing all of this for our child. You know, I couldn't ask for a better father. And then it's funny how once things go south and you know, all of a sudden she's looking at him in a negative light because I'm guessing he thwarted her, or maybe their situation romantically fell apart. All of a sudden, there's all this bad blood, and all of a sudden, she's doing all this bad talking and bad mouthing and throwing all this dirt on his name, throwing all of these allegations on his jacket. When prior to that point, she had nothing but great things to say, and that's fine because that always happens in breakups, right? That always happens, regardless how the relationship goes. When people break up, sometimes they say things about each other, but one thing you should never do is get in the way of a man who is actually trying to uphold his obligations, and not only his obligations, but a man who clearly apparently loves his child, and yet you're getting in the way just because you're letting your feelings, your emotions, and your impulse make you make these terrible decisions. Why would any woman in her right mind ask for the courts to limit an attentive father's time with his child to only 6 hours per week? There is no logical explanation for that. That is just some extremely vindictive, evil shit that a woman would do because she knows that the court systems generally skew in the favor of women. That's there. I mean, there's no way around it. That's just a fact, regardless of what you say. And at first, when I saw this on my timeline, right? At first, when I saw this on my timeline, I said, man, this can't be true. But then I decided to do a little bit of research. And then I did a little bit of research and I found this. Apparently, there's been several reports that indicate that Halle Bailey initially sought to limit DDG's visitation with their son Halo to 6 hours per week, with these visits being professionally monitored. Why does this man who you used to say previously, she constantly used to say how great of a father he was, why all of a sudden when y'all break up and then there's a contentious dynamic between the two of you, why all of a sudden does DDG all of a sudden now need, not only does he need supervised professional visitation with his own son, but you're trying to limit that man's time with his son to 6 hours per week? 6 hours per week. 13 days out of the year total. What happened to the fact that DDG was apparently such a great father? You hammerhead, sharp-looking asshole. What happened to that? All of a sudden, once this man is moving on to the next, when he's out there smashing other women, because y'all situation fell flat, it went south, which relationships do. Why all of a sudden is he all of a sudden a danger to your child? That he needs to have supervised visitation. And all of a sudden, he needs to have his time cut down with his own son to 6 hours per week? Make it make sense. There is no way to make it make sense because that's some bullshit. That is some bullshit. It says DDG, however, countered this proposal in court, expressing his willingness to have monitored visits 3 days a week from 9 to 6. And the judge apparently agreed to that arrangement. So let's take a look at this once more. So initially, Halle Bailey said, look, I want y'all to limit this nigga's time with our son down to 6 hours per week, which is just absolutely preposterous. I'm sure the judge probably thought the same thing, because that's why I'm sure the judge looked at her like she was crazy, because you got to have a good reason. If you're asking for a man who's actually making the efforts and putting that initiative forward as far as trying to see his child, you got to have a damn good reason that you're trying to limit his time to 6 fucking hours per week. Bitch, are you crazy? Are you stupid? Are you stupid? Cashmere too, are you stupid? You bitch ass motherfucker. Get off my stream. You're blocked. You're banned. Anyways, back to what I was saying. You have to be crazy. Why is it that everything is always in the woman's favor when it comes to these custody battles, bro? Like, you see, do you see what happened though? I think this is another one of those situations where she aimed so high. She knew that she wasn't going to get that initial request for the 6 hours. But when you aim high as a woman, when it comes to these custody battles, she said 6 hours per week. And then DDG had no option but to counter. What did he counter with? 3 days a week, 9 to 6. Even that, his counter is still an extremely weak position from a leverage standpoint. So basically, he just had to take the what would you call it? He just had to take the path of least resistance, I guess you would say. You know, like, this is still a bullshit hand that he's been dealt. However, when it comes to possibly only seeing your son for 6 hours out of a week, then I guess having your son for what's that, 9 hours, 3 days a week, I guess that makes it a little bit better. But still, in the grand scheme of things, that's still an extremely bad deal for the man. And this is my point. When it comes to these situations, yo, what's up? What's up, Amelia? What's happening? Lucy Ann, what's up? I'm going to read your comment in just a second. But back to what I'm saying. When it comes to these situations with these contentious custody battles that go to the courts, especially when it comes to celebrities, it's like the man always just has to kowtow and just bend to the will of the woman, because he knows that if he tries to push it too hard, the woman's going to end up getting even more custody. So this man has to deal with the fact that he's only going to get to see his son for 9 hours per day, 3 days a week. And this woman still basically has all the leverage, all the control. Based on what? That's my question, though. Based upon what? Because to my knowledge, now, like I said, I'm not a fan of either one of these people. Certainly not a fan of that hammerhead, sharp-looking asshole, and I'm not really a fan of DDG. I don't really know much about him, but this continues to be on my timeline, so I just wanted to touch on this. But before I go any further, let me see what this guy's talking about. Let's. What, man? Did I miss anybody crazy? Yeah, it is crazy, Sahil. But Lucianne, let me read your comment here. Officer Colbert that night was by himself, and I was only to my. Huh? I think you're on the wrong stream, Lucianne. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what she's talking about, man. Anyways, back to what I'm saying. So basically, when you're the man, and I can definitely relate to this, when you're the man and you're actually making all the efforts necessary, you're taking the initiative, you're making it clear that you are an active father and that you don't want to just sit back and let the woman do whatever she wants to do as far as just keeping your child away from you. You take it to court, you fight it, and even when you fight it, generally speaking, 9 times out of 10, the man still simply has to accept the position that is weak from a leverage standpoint due to the fact that he wants to see his child. He wants to be able to spend quality time with his child, but he knows that the courts are always going to rule favorably in favor of the woman. So you just have to take what you can. So as far as comparing the two, getting your son for 6 hours out of a full week, or maybe getting your son for 27 hours out of the week, obviously the 27 hours is better, but it's still a gross miscarriage of justice if we're being honest, right? I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I know that this is making sense because a lot of people who are looking at this objectively would have to feel that same way. And once again, I ask, on what grounds does Halle Bailey even have the authority or the leverage where she should be able to keep the child away from DDG? Because to my knowledge, let me know if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, there's never been any situations or any what would they call it? There's never been any allegations of any kind of abuse or any kind of negligence on his part. So what is it that is making DDG have to just sit back and pretty much have to wait for his time to be able to see his own child? And I think it ultimately just comes down to, what does it come down to? It comes down to the fact that she's been a baby face for so long. And if you know anything about wrestling, you know, when you're the baby face, you're the good guy. So that's what I look at. They look at DDG as a heel for some point, even though in heel in wrestling is the bad guy. I don't know why I'm equating this to a wrestling terminology, but basically that's how I'm looking at this. They still look at Halle Bailey as this innocent little girl when we have so much documented evidence now that she be on some bullshit. Did y'all see those text messages that got exposed like a month or two ago that she was sending? She was threatening all kinds of stuff. She was threatening that she was gonna kill herself. I'm sorry, I'm on YouTube. Unalive herself. I know they like to censor everything on here. She was threatening that she was going to unalive herself if DDG didn't do what she wanted him to do. So basically, she was making all of these ploys and saying all this stuff behind the scenes to DDG, even though in the public eye, she was this still innocent little girl. Oh, she can do no wrong. Well, what y'all got to understand when it comes to these women, man, you got to watch them. You got to watch them. It's never what you think. They put that representative on for the world to see, but behind closed doors, these be demons. That bitch is a demon. Let's keep it a stack. Let's keep it a stack. So we know that things are not necessarily what they seem to be when it comes to Halle Bailey. So I'm trying to figure out if we have proof that she was possibly going to harm herself while she had the baby. Wouldn't that actually give DDG, I would assume that should give him even more leverage on why he should be able to have his son more often. But no, for some reason, even though it seems like more facts and more evidence continues to come out in regards to this contentious situation between these two people, we still got this bitch with the nerve and the unmitigated gall to go to court asking for this type of shit. Asking to keep the baby away, not only keep the baby away from the man, but to force this man who's making every effort and every attempt possible to see his child, trying to force him to only get 6 hours out of a damn week. Unbelievable. But this is the United States of America. This is how they get down in family law court. This is how they get down. Now, obviously, like I said, who's the fourth person in that picture behind me? Who's the fourth person in the picture behind me? Hold on. Let's see. Well, what do you see? What do you see? So let me pull this up here. Let's see. All right, so you see MLK, obviously, Barack, Malcolm X. Right here. Oh, you probably can't even see my arrow. But the fourth person is Nelson Mandela. Sunday. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Wait a minute. Let me see. Can I? There we go. Well, oh shit. There's a fifth person too, by the way. Bob Marley. Yeah. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Yeah. Definitely a fly ass poster for sure. Anyways, back to what I was saying about DDG. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the guy, but when it comes to situations of custody battles, coming from somebody who has obviously been through the minutia of it, I've been like, if you've seen any of my previous content, obviously I'm an expert at this type of shit due to the fact that I've had to pay so much money when it came to that entire fight that I had to go through in the court system to get all the rights to my child and to make my extremely evil, vindictive baby mama stop playing fucking games with me. So I know exactly how that feels. So anytime I see these kind of stories, I do feel a little bit of the brushback, I guess you could say, because it hits me because I've been through the same shit that this guy's still going through. It doesn't matter how rich you are. This kind of stuff still applies to everybody. It's a human being thing. This is not a money thing. This is a human being thing. Women are always going to be women. Men are always going to be men. That's one thing that we can absolutely guarantee. But aside from that, I don't want to beat a dead horse. Y'all see that. Y'all see the flaw in this logic. Y'all see that this is some bullshit. But this is for the fellas out there who find yourselves in a position where you don't have children yet. Good. Well, you still have the ability to make sure that you're fully vetting the woman that you could potentially end up dealing with to make sure that you don't end up in a situation like this. Because if you're not fully vetting women and you're just jumping in bed, and then you're even worse, if you're just jumping in bed with women, just hitting everything raw, well, first and foremost, you already know that that's a bad idea because there's STDs just running rampant right now. But second of all, you don't know who you may end up getting pregnant. So just a rule of thumb, just a word of wisdom from a guy who's been out there. I've been in these streets for a minute. I'm not in the streets anymore, but just a guy who done fought them all and I done seen it all. Just take my advice, man. If you're not willing to actually think about the prospect of being a father to a child from that woman, I would say you definitely should not be hitting it raw. And obviously, in addition to the other things that I mentioned, such as the STDs, I mean, that should be the most important part to you. You don't want to catch anything out there. But you damn sure also don't want to end up having a child with a woman that you don't actually, one, truly care about, and two, that you're not actually compatible with. That's the biggest part. That's the biggest part. The last thing you want to do is be stuck with a vindictive woman who's going to make your life a living hell in perpetuity. You don't want that, guys. Trust me. And there's a whole lot of us who have lived it or who are currently living that exact reality where we love our children more than anything in this world, and we are extremely active, hands-on fathers, such as I am. But there's always going to be this woman who, regardless how great of a father you are, no matter how much you do, they're still going to constantly be trying to poke you, do anything they can to throw a wrench in the works to make your life a living hell. That's just how it is. But nobody's gonna feel sorry for you, because I don't feel sorry for myself. I just push through. I just keep living life, and I keep dealing with the hand that I'm dealt. But I do want all of the men who don't have children yet, I want you to always know that a wise man, well, let's put it like this. A smart man learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So if I'm telling you this, and I'm sure a lot of other guys out there, you don't want to listen to me. There's a whole lot of dudes out there that are giving you the same kind of game, man. Listen, just be very careful about who you smash. That's what it ultimately comes down to. I mean, when you're young, you're just running out in those streets, having fun, smashing all these bitches. I know it. I've been there, done that, did it to the max. Shit was fun. It was a blast. However, there are consequences to all of our actions. Just know that. Just know that, man. I mean, that's just as simple as I can put it, man. Anyways, I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I just wanted to briefly touch on this DDG topic because it's preposterous, but such is the world that we live in, right? 6 hours per week is what Halle Bailey wanted. And she actually asked for that with a straight face, or as straight as her face can be, seeing as her eyes are on two different sides of her head. Anyways, that's all I want to say tonight, man. Y'all be blessed. Stay safe and yet stay dangerous. This is your man, Thatch the Great. I'll holla. Peace.